We are going to turn now to another big mover of the day. Looking at shares of AstraZeneca, that stock is down a little over 3.5% after reporting their second quarter results. Seeing strong demand for its cancer, rare disease, and heart disease drugs, but struggling in some other aspects of the earnings print. So joining me now to discuss, we've got Pascal Soriot, AstraZeneca's CEO, and I'm also joined by Yahoo Finance's senior health reporter Anjalee Khemlani. Pascal, it's great to have you on. I want to jump in on what could potentially putting some downward pressure on this stock this morning, and that's specifically costs, which is a key issue for investors and the management of those costs. What is the single biggest change that you're going to make in the second half of this year to manage those costs a little bit more efficiently?
Well, thank you very much for having me today, and it's a great question. In fact, we had a great first half and a record second quarter where we almost achieved 13 billion sales. For the first half, we grew 18%. We actually upgraded our guidance both on the revenue and the profit side. We now expect mid-teens growth in revenue and profit, mid-teens being 15 to 17% growth. So we think this is very, very strong. The cost part is linked to the investment in R&D we are making. We continue investing strongly in our pipeline. We have a very strong lineup of new products. We're also investing in future technologies that will shape the future of medicine. We can talk about those. There's several of those that will shape the future of cancer care, but also cardiovascular medicine. And of course, investing in R&D creates additional costs in the near term. The second half of the year, the growth of our cost base will be less because last year we invested a lot in R&D in the second half. So I think people can expect moderated growth in the second half. But overall, we are very much on track. In fact, we are above what we expected at the beginning of the year and absolutely on track to deliver our long-term ambition.
Pascal, Anjalee here. Really good to see you again. I know that in part of the cancer and ongoing oncology growth, you're looking at those antibody drug conjugates, and that's part of the story of looking towards the future. But at the same time, you're also focusing on manufacturing, which we've seen as an area broadly across the sector that has been running into some issues. You've been looking at expanding as well in China. I know that's one of the growth areas for you. Can you talk to me about how you're doing that and what your thoughts are despite some of the pressure you're seeing from the U.S. government and the concerns that they have with that economy and with that country?
Yeah, it's a great questions actually, Anjalee, but I think there's two questions in your question. One is the new technologies, and you're absolutely right. We're investing in new technologies, antibody drug conjugates, new types of bispecific antibodies, radioconjugates. We're investing in cell therapy, and our vision for cancer is really to attack, if you will, the tumor in the case of a metastatic cancer, to attack the tumor with the combination of antibody drug conjugates and new bispecific antibodies, break down the tumor, shrink it, bring it to a lower level of intensity, and then bring in cell therapy. And with this, we believe there is a possibility to bring cure to some cancers, some patients. It's very exciting, and it's going to take another few years to deliver, but very exciting. As a result, we're investing in manufacturing these antibody drug conjugates, which is the combination of an antibody and a toxin. We're also investing in the manufacturing of radioconjugates and the manufacturing of cell therapy. We have invested in the building of a cell therapy manufacturing plant in Maryland. So all of this is driving a lot of investment, of course. As it relates to your second question, China and the US, essentially what we're doing is making sure that we have two supply chains, if you will. One taking care of the West, if you want to define like this, Western countries, and one that is more specifically targeted at supplying China and some emerging markets. So, we are really trying to have two supply chains that are relatively independent from each other.
Pascal, since you bring up China, I want to follow on that. Obviously, we are in the middle of a presidential election cycle here in the U.S. How are you thinking about the potential impact of either candidate taking office? Both have so far, and at least pulling from previous remarks from the Biden campaign at least, both have talked about increased tariffs that could impact U.S.-China tensions and potentially escalate the trade war moving forward. To what extent do you think that could be a headwind for AstraZeneca?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you for the question, but I'm not a political commentator. So the only thing I can say is we operate in almost every country in the world. And as you can imagine, every country has a different political system and political environment. And essentially, we adapt to every environment we are in, and our focus is really delivering medicines to patients. Now, in terms of this China-US question, again, we are focusing on making sure we have two separate supply chains, and we separate the research and development part from the manufacturing part so that we can source innovation from one part of the world or the other. But when we have sourced this innovation, whether it's our own innovation or in-licensed innovation, we then develop it globally, and we insulate, if you want, the supply chain so we can supply various countries separately. The US is the #1 source of innovation in the world in our industry. China is a second one, growing rapidly. And I think we need to continue sourcing innovation from China because it will benefit the entire world. And then, of course, make sure we can supply separately. And we also have 1.4 billion people in China who are getting richer and older and have diseases, of course, and then they need our medicines. They can afford our medicines. We need to take care of them. So we really try to stay true to our mission and manage the turbulences, if you want, through the mechanisms I've described.
Pascal, I hear your point on not being a political commentator, but I do also want to ask you, in light of the fact that we are in a pretty interesting year, if you will, politically in the U.S., and the type of pressure that the industry is facing. I know you've talked about your stance on the IRA in particular. One of your drugs is in the middle of negotiations. But moving forward, the outlook for the company, especially with the growth that you saw this quarter, what are you thinking about, and how are you thinking about the ways to continue that growth and meet your 2030 goals of $80 billion?
Yes, we have a very ambitious goal of 80 billion in 2030, $80 billion US dollars, that is, in 2030. And the US will continue to represent a very important part of this, both from an R&D and innovation viewpoint, a manufacturing viewpoint, and of course, a commercialization viewpoint. So, political systems change, and of course, the pressure on access prices is there everywhere in the world, whether it's the US, Europe, and everywhere. But the United States has been and remains a very strong player in terms of innovation that benefits patients, but also benefits the economy because a lot of that innovations create value in the United States that everybody benefits from. And we hope that future governments will keep this in mind, of course, and continue supporting investment in R&D and innovation that really changes people's lives and I believe creates economic value. And within this, we will continue managing the pricing and access pressures we experience everywhere. One last point is, I think it's important for Americans to remember that the US is the country where people access innovation the fastest and the broadest, actually. And so American citizens have access to innovative medicines much earlier than everybody else in the world. It's not perfect. There are difficulties, there are challenges. But certainly, healthcare in the US is ahead of what people get in Europe. There's no doubt about it.
All right, Pascal, we're going to have to leave it there, but really appreciate you joining us. That was Pascal Soriot, AstraZeneca's CEO, and of course, Yahoo Finance's senior health reporter, Anjalee Khemlani. Anj, thanks for joining us as well.